Betrayal over a throne. It's 1199 and King Richard the Lionheart of England is dead. The man who spent his entire life fighting in the Crusades, crushing his enemies, and building a legend has finally fallen. Not in battle, but to a crossbow bolt in France. And his brother John is absolutely thrilled. See, John had been waiting for this moment his entire life. He was the youngest son of King Henry II, and he'd spent decades watching his older brothers get all the glory. Richard got the throne. Richard got the fame. Richard got the respect. John got nothing but scraps. But Richard was dead now, and John was about to be crowned King of England. There was just one problem. Richard had actually named Arthur of Brittany as his successor. Arthur was Richard's nephew, the son of another brother who had died young. And under the rules of succession, Arthur had a stronger claim to the throne than John. John was having none of it. He launched a campaign to seize the crown, recruiting mercenaries and buying off nobles who could have supported Arthur. The campaign succeeded, and John was crowned King of England in 1199. But Arthur refused to give up his claim. He was young, ambitious, and backed by the powerful King Philip of France. Arthur raised an army and marched against his uncle, looking to take back what was rightfully his. John captured Arthur in 1202 and threw him in prison, and then he did something so cold that even his own supporters were horrified. No one knows exactly what happened in that dungeon, but what's clear is that Arthur of Brittany never walked out alive. Some say John killed him with his own hands. Others say he was starved to death. But the most popular version is the worst one. John allegedly sent men to stab Arthur in the eyes, then castrated him before finishing him off. Arthur was just 15 years old. But John's betrayal didn't stop there. When the news got out, the nobles of Brittany revolted. Arthur's half-sister Eleanor, who was still alive and imprisoned by John, became a rallying cry for the rebels. John, terrified she would be used against him, kept her locked in a dungeon for the rest of her life. Eleanor lived for 39 years in captivity, and John's betrayals didn't stop with his own family. He turned against his own barons, raising taxes, crushing dissent, and ignoring his obligations as king. Eventually, the barons had enough. They forced him to sign the Magna Carta in 1215, a document that limited the power of the king and gave rights to the people. John signed it under duress, and then he immediately tried to break it, sparking a civil war that tore England apart. When John died in 1216 from dysentery, few mourned him. He'd been a failure as a king, a failure as a brother, and a failure as a man. His own subjects called him John Softsword and John Lackland because he'd lost so much territory in France. But his worst legacy was the way he treated his own blood. A man who kills his own nephew and imprisons his niece for 4 decades isn't just a traitor, he's something far worse. The favorite son who plotted his father's murder. It's 1779, and Sultan Mehmed III is sitting on the throne of the Ottoman Empire. He's old, he's tired, and he's just discovered something that's shattered his world. His favorite son, the Crown Prince Selim, has been plotting to overthrow him. Selim was the jewel of the Ottoman royal family. He was handsome, intelligent, and beloved by the court. Mehmed had poured his heart and soul into raising Selim to be his successor. He'd taught him everything he knew about leadership, warfare, and diplomacy. He'd given him everything. And Selim had betrayed him. Mehmed discovered the plot through intercepted messages. Selim had been secretly meeting with powerful viziers and military commanders, trying to build a coalition to seize the throne before his father could name a different successor. Mehmed was heartbroken, but he was also an Ottoman sultan. He knew what had to be done. His response was swift and brutal. He ordered Selim arrested and thrown into a dark, damp prison cell. Then he sent his spies to uncover every single person who had conspired with his son. Over the next month, Mehmed's executioners worked tirelessly. Viziers were strangled, military commanders were beheaded. Courtiers who had whispered to Selim were put to death in the most painful ways imaginable: impalement, drowning, strangulation with a bowstring. Mehmed didn't stop there. When he discovered that Selim had confided in his own mother, the Sultana, Mehmed had her dragged from the palace and thrown into the Bosporus. She drowned in the cold waters, her body never recovered. And then Mehmed turned his gaze to his own son. Selim lay in his cell, waiting for his fate. He knew what was coming. He'd seen it happen to his own brothers when his father had come to the throne, but he never expected this. The executioners arrived at his cell and dragged him to the throne room. Mehmed was sitting there, waiting for him. His face was cold. His eyes were empty. Mehmed said, I gave you everything. I loved you. I trusted you. And you repaid me with betrayal." Selim begged for mercy. He fell to his knees. He wept and pleaded and promised to be loyal until his dying breath. But Mehmed was having none of it. He ordered the executioners to take Selim to the palace gardens and hang him by the neck until he was dead. But even that wasn't enough. After Selim was dead, Mehmed had his body thrown into a pit and covered with quicklime to ensure he would never be buried with honor. The execution took place in the middle of the night. By the time the sun rose, Selim had been erased from existence. He was never mentioned in Ottoman chronicles again. Mehmed lived for another 5 years, but he was never the same. The betrayal had broken something inside him. He became paranoid, suspicious, and deeply distrustful of everyone around him. He died alone in his palace, surrounded by courtiers who feared him and servants who hated him. Selim's name was never spoken again. But for the rest of Mehmed's reign, the memory of his favorite son's betrayal haunted him like a ghost.